Hi everyone, welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the film from 2005, The Skeleton Key. Without any further, let's get started. The film opens with Caroline, a nurse, reading her patient a story, but the patient passes away shortly after. After telling his colleague Audrey about the patient's death, she packs her patient's records and photos into a box. Later, in a dumpster, she finds boxes of personal belongings from other recently dead patients thrown out like trash. Because this is too much for her, she chooses to quit the hospital in order to work as a personal care assistant. At the same time, Caroline is at the bar with her friend Jill. She shows her the interview she is going to have and informs her that one of her patients has passed away. She appears irritated by the hospital where she used to work and tells Jill that they don't care about their patient, so she decides to quit. Later, they begin dancing at the bar. Caroline travels to a remote estate on the edge of a swampy bayou in New Orleans, where she meets Luke and the Devereaux family, which includes Ben, who is not feeling well, and his wife Violet, who is suspicious of Caroline right away due to her origins.
What do you want, a Southern accent?
Luke intervenes, keeping the situation under control and encouraging Caroline to accept the position. Drawn by Ben's enigmatic illness, Caroline accepts and gets settled in the mansion to prepare for her new position.
It makes you feel any better?
After that, Caroline goes to the mansion to begin her new job, but not before stopping briefly at a rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere. The place has a few strange features, such as a trail of red dust along the doorway and animal bones hanging like design, which give it a spooky vibe. After getting scared upon seeing an old woman holding a child, she hurriedly paid the bill and left. After arriving at the mansion and settling up, Caroline notices something odd right away. Ignoring it, she proceeds to Ben's room. When she reminds him who she is, he suddenly grips her hand tightly, confusing her. When Violet arrives, he then lets her go, but Violet, the lady of the mansion, adamantly demands that they remain apart. As she shows her around the enormous ancient mansion, Violet gives Caroline a skeleton key that should unlock any door. Ben is taken care of by Caroline, who one afternoon takes him to the garden, where Violet is waiting. Caroline is casually instructed by Violet to get some seed packets from a box inside the house. As Caroline goes in, she notices a door that is slightly swaying but still closed. Out of curiosity, she tries to use the skeleton key to unlock it, but a second door closes behind her, even though no one else is there. Caroline quickly heads downstairs and sees Violet. When Caroline asks Violet why, she only responds that she has never been able to unlock the door on her own. Caroline is asleep in the evening, but she awakens when she hears an odd noise coming from the other part of the house. She heads straight upstairs to see if Ben is in his bed, but he isn't there. She finds out that Ben managed to crawl outside his bedroom window onto the roof, which caused him to go through a quick but painful fall to the earth. Luke arrives the following day to inquire about what happened, and Caroline shows him the bed linens from the previous day, but they are clean and blank. The topic of conversation then turns to Caroline's father, who she informs him is deceased, even though she was unaware of his illness.
Was that so?
She then informs Luke that Ben asked for help with a touch and a glance until Violet abruptly cuts them off. After successfully breaking into the locked attic area, Caroline is shocked to discover a variety of odd ceremonial and frightening objects. Unexpectedly, Violet comes to the attic room, but Caroline manages to hide and Caroline finds the mystery mirror. Wondering what she's stumbled onto, Caroline stealthily returns to her apartment with the ancient album, The Conjure of Sacrifice. After Violet notices a mirror in Ben's room and becomes enraged, she informs Caroline that mirrors are not permitted. Caroline is unconcerned and proceeds to inquire about the attic room. Following a heated argument about the odd events that had been occurring there, Violet tells Caroline about the house's gloomy history. Years ago, a wealthy white family owned the mansion, and they had two black servants, Mama Cecile and Papa Justify, who practiced hoodoo. During a magnificent party, guests discovered Cecile and Justify doing a ceremony with the family's children in the attic. The crowd became so angry that they hauled the servants outside, hung them from a tree, and set fire to their bodies. Violet says that Justify had discovered a deadly hoodoo magic called the Conjuring of Sacrifice, and ever since they passed away she thinks their ghosts haunt the house. While taking a bath, Caroline chooses to investigate Violet's allegations. She pulls out a little mirror and places it up to Ben's face. When he sees his reflection, he becomes clearly frightened, confirming to Caroline that something strange is happening. Caroline visits the woman who sells mystical things, tells her about Ben's peculiar situation, and gets a spell that should lift any hex or curse that has been placed on him. Later, she goes to Jill and tells her everything, but in reverse, Jill doesn't understand what Caroline is doing. Caroline then carries out the ritual, and to her amazement, it succeeds. Ben starts to speak, begging for her help, but before he can say anything more, Violet interrupts, putting the situation to a sudden stop. Desperate to prove her point, Caroline takes Luke back to the rural gas station she had previously visited. This time, she recognizes the red dust that has been thrown across the doorway. Red brick dust, a popular hoodoo practice used to ward off enemy. In the meantime, Caroline comes onto an elderly woman who is playing vinyl records that closely resemble those in the Devereaux attic. Out of curiosity, Caroline inquires whether she has ever heard of a record known as the Conjure of Sacrifice, and the old woman reacts in horror. At the dinner table, Violet and Caroline exchange weary glances, as Caroline watches intently and hardly touches her food. When the lights suddenly go out, Violet gets up to get a candle, which gives Caroline a chance to put some medication in Violet's drink. Shortly after, the medication begins to affect Violet and causes her to lose control. Violet is about to use a magic circle to defend herself, but Caroline steps in, causing Violet to pass unconscious. Caroline seizes the opportunity, dragging Ben to her car and trying to drive off. But Violet regains consciousness and starts chanting spells that somehow stop the car from going through the property's locked gates. Violet now has a shotgun and is approaching, so Caroline hurries to conceal Ben in a nearby shed. Caroline gets into a boat and paddles through it in order to get to the opposite side of the swamp. She finds a taxi back to New Orleans and immediately goes to Luke's place in the hopes of getting help. As she gets there, the phone rings, and it's Violet on the other end. Luke moves aside to answer it, but Caroline goes to his desk and is startled to see her photo and a skeleton key from the mansion. Before she has a chance to react, Luke arrives behind her and begins strangling her until she loses consciousness. She awakens to find herself gagged and chained in the back of his car as Luke drives Caroline back to the Devereaux mansion. As they arrive, Violet is waiting for them, urging Luke to be kind and not hurt her any more than she already does. They also put pressure on Caroline to tell where is Ben hiding, and when Violet goes to get him, Caroline takes advantage of the opportunity to escape Luke's hold. She quickly runs to her bedroom, where she has covered the entryway with a protective layer of brick dust in the hopes that it will deter her assailants. Caroline hastily closes off the mansion and covers every doorway with red brick dust to keep Luke at bay. As she's starting to acquire some control, Violet appears, breaks her dust jar. Violet falls down landing, with a sickening crunch, breaking her legs. Caroline seizes the opportunity and quickly calls the police, pleading for assistance. She then frantically calls her friend Jill, explaining that she is in danger at the Devereaux mansion. But before she can say anything more, Violet, who has managed to drag herself back up the stairs despite her injuries, shows up and cuts the phone cord, preventing her from leaving the house and Violet closing in upstairs. Desperate, Caroline rushes into the attic and draws a protective circle around herself using an outline she took from Violet. She meticulously arranges the sulfur, chalk, blood, and hair as directed to finish the setting. As Caroline finishes the circle, and Violet drags herself into the attic, Caroline, who feels safe in the circle, is shocked when Violet makes fun of her. When Violet unveils a mirror and approaches Caroline, who becomes terrified and starts saying again that she doesn't believe. Then both ladies are abruptly thrown back by a strong force. When they regain consciousness, it is evident that significant change happened. Caroline now speaks in a cool, calm manner. She sounds exactly like Violet, who was actually Cecile's ghost who had long since taken Violet Devereaux's body. Luke too has been taken over by Papa Justify and is no longer himself. Jill shows up the following day to answer Caroline's previous call. Just as they are being pushed away, Caroline and Violet's body glances at her, desperate to tell Jill the truth, but is unable to speak. In the meantime, Cecile and Justify allow themselves in Caroline's and Luke's young bodies, putting Jill into the ambulance with them. At the end of the movie, Caroline is stuck in Violet's aging body and taken away in an ambulance with Ben. And at the same time, Violet put on her wedding ring. Thanks for watching, and remember to turn on your notifications to watch more movie recaps like this one.